On this Thursday night, a tornado roars through an Ottawa suburb.
Everything started to shake.
The damage and the frightening moments for people. The heat is on.
They wore no shoes, they are dizzy.
The scorching weather roasting southern Europe. A tentative deal in the BC port strike. The cautious optimism.
We're not out of the woods yet.
And in Hollywood, lights, camera, job action. Why actors are joining writers on the picket line. And hooped.
This person seems to have an axe to grind.
Why this basketball net is courting controversy.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
It happened with no warning in the middle of the day. A tornado touched down in an Ottawa suburb today, damaging roofs, shattering windows, and sending debris flying. Part of a dangerous storm system that ripped through parts of eastern Ontario and into southern Quebec. The entire island of Montreal was under a tornado warning at one point. That's since been lifted, but Environment Canada confirms a tornado did touch down near Mirabel Airport, northwest of Montreal. It was in Barrhaven, Ontario, a suburb about 40 minutes south of Parliament Hill, that it appears the most significant damage occurred from today's storm. At least 125 homes there were damaged. Global's David Baxter is there assessing the damage and talking to witnesses. David.
Donna, this is just some of the damage of a tornado that ripped through the southern Ottawa suburb of Barrhaven earlier this afternoon. Now behind me, you can see the large styrofoam blocks from a construction site. They blew across a field and landed in front of these townhomes, causing quite a bit of damage. And if we look up, you can see the damaged roof of these townhomes as well. The damaged roofs, a pretty common sight in the area. Now, this was a very fast and furious storm that came in with little to no warning for the residents in the area.
We saw a huge cloud and I wasn't sure what it was, and then I live streamed to my friend and we started seeing the floating debris and the swirls.
So I started running downstairs, and by the time I was down the stairs it had stopped, and I looked out. I lost 4 shingles off my roof and a fence, so I'm very lucky compared to some other people around here.
The storm passed almost as quickly as it formed, but the trail of damage left behind is evidence of its intensity.
Everything started to shake.
It was a rude awakening for Mohammed Omar. He was taking a lunch hour nap when the storm hit. The windshield of his car is broken, but he's thankful the damage in the area is only superficial.
As long as everyone's okay, no one's hurt, that's the most important part.
Between the damaged roofs, a smashed window, and even a piece of wood driven through a fence, the severity of this storm is obvious. But for residents, the lead-up was not. Many in the area saying they did not receive the tornado warning on their phones until the storm was already in progress. Now, the Ottawa Paramedic Service says they did have to take one person to the hospital after they were struck by a flying piece of debris. But thankfully, that person did not suffer any life-threatening injuries and is in stable condition. Donna?
Okay, David Baxter in Barrhaven, a suburb of Ottawa. Thanks. There is more dangerous weather to tell you about tonight in Europe and the southwestern U.S. More than 110 million people from Arizona to Florida are under some sort of heat warning tonight. Phoenix has hit 43 degrees Celsius or higher for the last 13 days in a row. At least 12 people have died from heat in Arizona this year. 55 more possible heat deaths are under investigation. Temperatures could reach 46 to 49 degrees Celsius in some areas this weekend. And people in southern Europe are also sweltering under record-breaking heat. In Italy, red alerts have been issued from multiple cities because of a heat wave that's been dubbed Cerberus, the three-headed dog in Greek mythology that guards the gates of hell. Alerts are in place in Spain, Italy, and Greece, where temperatures are expected to hit 48 degrees Celsius in some areas this week. This heat map shows the ground temperature in Spain reaching a scorching 60 degrees Celsius on Tuesday. The hottest areas turned from red to black. In Croatia, people are relying on an old method to cool off, covering themselves in mud. Our Europe Bureau Chief, Goomansingh, on the effects of this unbearable heat.
From the Acropolis, stunning views of Athens can be admired, but many visitors might have a hard time seeing with salty beads of sweat dripping into their eyes.
Thank you.
Oppressive temperatures brought out the Red Cross as those waiting hours in massive lines began suffering the effects of heat stroke.
They wore no shoes, they are dizzy, they don't feel well, they want somewhere to sit.
The ancient sites of Greece offer visitors many things, but shade and air conditioning are not on the list. The blistering sun is also scorching for those lining up to get into Vatican museums. Rome saw temperatures reach 34 degrees Celsius.
Today it's still okay because we're a little bit out of the sun. But we were yesterday at the Colosseum and there it was like 38 degrees.
The extreme conditions should no longer be shocking, says this climate scientist.
Certainly, we should immediately stop pumping greenhouse gases into the atmosphere because that is going to cause even more problems in the future. But we must realise we're locked into some of these changes now, and we will continue to see records broken.
Red alerts have been issued for at least 10 Italian cities, including Rome, by the Ministry of Health for the next 2 days. Researchers for European health institutes estimated more than 61,000 people from across 35 European countries died last year of heat-related causes. It was the hottest summer on record so far.
It's really hard. I've got asthma, so this heat is terrible, for it. We were in Rome and had to actually have the paramedics called because the heat was so bad.
And getting cool is a challenge. Air conditioning is rare in most European homes. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
After nearly 2 weeks, a tentative deal has been reached in the strike at the BC port in Vancouver. The federal Labour minister has now left Vancouver after the two sides agreed on a contract drafted by a federal mediator. The labour disruption cost the Canadian economy an estimated $500 million a day. And as Neetu Garcha reports, the effects will linger for a long time.
Cargo operations at British Columbia ports are set to be restored quickly as the workers' strike has come to an end on its 13th day. A statement from the employer announced a tentative 4-year deal recognizing the skills and efforts of BC's waterfront workforce. No details have been made public, with the agreement subject to ratification by both parties. Business groups are welcoming the news, but caution what's ahead.
Fantastic news that this has been settled, but the damage has been done. There's weeks and weeks, if not months, of backlog to get through. So we're not out of the woods yet.
A joint statement from the federal Labour and Transport Minister says deals like this made between parties at the collective bargaining table are the best way to preserve the long-term stability of Canada's economy. But we do not want to be back here again.
This does set a precedent for actually bargaining at the table.
But some Labour experts accuse business groups of not acting in good faith, given how quickly they called for back-to-work legislation.
When any province, any territory wants to raise the minimum wage, they all cry out and say, no, we can't afford it. And the government shouldn't interfere in the economy. And the minute workers take some power back, they're like, oh, government, please help us.
The union and the employer were given 24 hours to review recommendations ordered by Labour Minister Seamus O'Regan before deciding on the deal. Some 7,400 BC port workers walked off the job on July 1st. The work stoppage, affecting about 30 ports in BC, including Canada's largest, the Port of Vancouver, disrupted billions in trade and demanding attention at this week's Premier's meetings.
Workers need to be treated fairly, and the issue at the port cannot drag on, because it has a profoundly damaging impact across the country on workers that are also trying to feed their families right now.
Key issues for the union were wages and cost of living, contracting outside work, and automation. Labour peace seems to have been achieved as efforts now aim to restore the reputation of Canada's largest gateway. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
First, it was the screenwriters. Now Hollywood actors are going on strike. It means scripted TV and movie production will cease immediately in what is the first dual work stoppage by both actors and writers in 63 years. Today, the head of the Actors Union said the studio's responses to the actors' concerns have been insulting and disrespectful.
We are the victims here. We are being victimized by a very greedy entity. I am shocked by the way the people that we have been in business with are treating us. I cannot believe it, quite frankly. How far apart we are on so many things.
Actors say they will be on the picket line tomorrow. Jackson Prosco on what they're demanding and how the strike will impact what you watch.
This blockbuster labor dispute will shut down production for both big screen and small. Hollywood will go dark.
Actors are looking for compensation that keeps up with inflation. They're looking for a sustainable career, and they are looking to not be replaced by AI. Those are the key issues at play here.
The effects will be immediate. Film and scripted series will cease production. Actors won't promote movies that are already finished. In London, the stars of Oppenheimer walked out of the film's premiere.
We had to protect the people who are kind of on the margins, and there are a lot of people who residual payments are what carry them across that threshold.
And if the dispute drags on, the red carpet will sit empty at events like the Toronto International Film Festival.
The entire infrastructure of Hollywood's affected. There are economies that are impacted all over the U.S. and all over the world.
Pay is arguably the biggest issue. Many actors say the Hollywood dream is simply out of reach, especially as streaming services flip the script on residual payments.
The entire business model has been changed by streaming, digital, AI. This is a moment of history. That is a moment of truth.
The Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, representing major studios, says it offered what it called historic pay and residual increases. A federal mediator was unable to bring the two sides together.
From the producer's perspective, the demands of the actors are unrealistic at a time when the business truly is in a state of crisis.
What do we want?
A crisis made worse by another labor dispute. Screenwriters walked off the job more than 70 days ago over the exact same issues. In their absence, TV networks had already prepared a fall schedule full of unscripted reality shows.
In some ways, this strike couldn't be timed worse for the artists and couldn't be timed better for the studios and streamers because they were already in a severe cost-cutting mode.
Leaving audiences at a loss for new content at a time when there are more ways to watch than ever. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
Toronto police have arrested and charged a man with second-degree murder related to a shooting last week that killed an innocent bystander. 44-year-old Carolina Hubner-Macarat was hit by a stray bullet last Friday while walking in Toronto's Leslieville neighborhood. Police allege 32-year-old Damien Hudson was one of three men involved in an altercation that led to an exchange of gunfire. Hudson was out on bail at the time and had been convicted of a number of offenses, including violent assault. Police are still trying to identify the two other men involved. In Winnipeg, tensions are flaring after the provincial government decided not to support the search of a landfill site for the remains of Indigenous women who were believed to have been dumped there last year. There have been days of protests as a group of demonstrators blocked the entrance to the landfill site. As Melissa Ridgen reports, a judge is now deciding whether to grant an injunction to remove that blockade.
Hey, yo! This is one of several confrontations making rounds on social media. Take care of your own. We are, you. Then why are they dead? Outbursts against a blockade set up by those demanding a search of landfills for the bodies of missing or murdered Indigenous women. Your body, God! This confrontation, days later, ended up on the man's doorstep. Police have charged a 19-year-old with mischief for a rock thrown through a window. No charges have been laid for the red spray-painted handprints.
I'd rather the money be spent on living women who could be protected instead of women who are already dead.
That's why you're
for that.
Right? We deserve a peaceful burial, though, too. The Manitoba government announced last week it won't support that, spurring this unrest, saying a search would cost too many millions, take many months or years, and would put searchers at risk digging through thousands of tons of toxic, densely compacted waste here at the Prairie Green landfill, where police believe Morgan Harris and Mercedes Myron's remains are.
This has been dealt with in a very heartless way, quite frankly, and we do absolutely have to try as a federal government.
An online petition with more than 35,000 signatures agrees.
They need to go and get them. You know, I'm not going to have my nieces go sit at a landfill to visit their mom for the rest of eternity.
It remains to be seen if Ottawa will commit to foot that bill. A judge hasn't yet ruled on the city's request for an injunction to remove the blockade. Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Winnipeg.
The scoop on an artificial sweetener. Coming up, the World Health Organization weighs in on the safety of aspartame. The first over-the-counter birth control pill has been approved in the U.S., paving the way for millions of women to buy contraceptives without a prescription. Drug maker Perrigo will start selling its once-a-day pill early next year. The change is expected to broaden access for young women and those from low-income and minority backgrounds who often face extra hurdles getting a prescription. Hormone-based pills have long been the most common form of birth control in the United States. There is some news from the World Health Organization about a common artificial sweetener. The WHO has declared aspartame to be a possible carcinogen to humans. That sounds worrying because it's been approved for use in drinks and food for decades. And critics say this new warning will spark needless alarm and mislead consumers. Catherine Ward puts the whole thing into perspective.
When aspartame was invented in the 1960s, the food additive was one way to curb the amount of sugar in processed food. The World Health Organization has now labeled aspartame as possibly carcinogenic to humans under the 2B classification. That might sound alarming, but experts, even the ones with the research group who presented the findings, say there is no need to panic.
It means it is acceptable to consume a certain amount of aspartame without having appreciable health effects.
In our view, this is really more a call to the research community to try to better clarify and understand the carcinogenic hazard that may or may not be posed by aspartame consumption.
Toxicologists say context is critical.
That same category of potential risk also includes things like aloe vera, electromagnetic fields, and Wi-Fi, and so other things that we don't really worry about. And I think one last way to kind of put this in perspective is something that we know is a carcinogen is alcohol.
You would have to drink a lot of diet soda to get close to unhealthy levels of aspartame consumption. The WHO says you can have up to 40 milligrams of aspartame per kilogram of body weight per day. For an average 70-kilogram person and sodas containing about 200 milligrams of aspartame, that means up to 14 cans of diet soda.
Dr. Christopher Labos is concerned this key message will get lost.
People are going to misinterpret this to mean artificial sweeteners are dangerous. We have 30, 40 years of data of people consuming these products and not really seeing any health effects.
If you're consuming diet drinks as a healthier choice, doctors say there is a better, simpler option.
The best way to be healthy is to switch from regular soda to water. So when you're trying to make that choice between, sugar and artificial sweeteners, pick neither.
Catherine Ward, Global News, Toronto.
Airspace assault ahead, an overnight Russian drone attack on Ukraine's capital. An investigation into the sinking of a boat carrying hundreds of people off the coast of Greece last month is casting doubt on the official version of events from the Greek Coast Guard. Through new video, court documents and interviews, BBC News is reporting that some migrants who survived the sinking were pressured and intimidated by Greek authorities after some suggested the Coast Guard may have played a part in the sinking when a rope was used to try to tow the vessel. Survivors also allege they were pressed to identify 9 Egyptians on board as traffickers. Those people were later arrested. Greek authorities have not commented on the BBC report. Officially, at least 82 people are known to have died. The UN estimates as many as 500 more were on board and never found. The Ukrainian capital has come under Russian attack for a third straight night. Ukraine says its air defenses shot down 20 drones targeting Kyiv. At least one person was killed by falling debris. Others suffered smoke inhalation from fires sparked in apartment buildings. A military spokesperson claims Ukraine has received cluster munitions from the U.S. now to help bolster its offensive, but has yet to use them. And one of Kyiv's biggest landmarks, the Motherland Monument, is getting a new steel shield with the Ukrainian Trident. It replaces the Soviet coat of arms made in 1981. The sculptor says the Trident, which represents state power, is one of the most important symbols of Ukraine's identity. The change should be complete by the end of August. Out of bounds next, basketball and bylaws tip off in an Ottawa neighborhood. That's Aeroweave CEO demonstrating how strong his company's cardboard beds are. They're the official athlete beds for the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. And there's another twist. Each athlete will be scanned and photographed when they go into the athletes' village, and then an AI program will determine the best possible mattress based on their height, weight, and sport. There's a saying that good fences make good neighbors, but everyone who lives in a city knows the boundaries between neighbors can get blurred sometimes. One mother in an Ottawa neighborhood has discovered that. A neighbor has complained to the city almost a dozen times that the kids' basketball hoop is too close to the road. And as Turia Isri explains, the family is jumping through hoops just so they can play.
This game of pickup basketball has an invisible opponent. An anonymous neighbor who seems bent on getting the bouncing to stop.
This person seems to have an axe to grind. It is persistent.
How persistent? For more than a year, the city of Ottawa has received complaint after complaint about the net on Rosalind Pasiga's driveway.
Dear neighbor.
She wrote an open letter to her mystery neighbor, pleading with them to cut kids in the neighborhood some slack. Someone has repeatedly reported on her net and others in the area. According to the city's rule book, the games are out of bounds. Bylaw officers have knocked on Pasiga's door multiple times, asking her to move the net because it is too close to the sidewalk.
Essentially, our basketball net would have to live about this far back from the road.
Meaning her 10-year-old and 6-year-old would have to drag it back every time they finish playing.
Oh, I can barely move it myself.
There have been 9 anonymous complaints about basketball nets in the area. We asked around, and none of the neighbors who we spoke to had a problem with the nets. So for now, the complainer's identity remains a mystery.
But yeah, 9 complaints seems fairly excessive.
I think anything that gets kids outside playing together can only really be a positive thing.
Over the years, complaints have poured in about other pastimes. Street hockey games, even little free libraries violate bylaws. This neighbor says it's time for people to lighten up.
They're good kids. I mean, would they rather that they be in a gang somewhere? You know, I mean, really? They're safe, they're in the street, nobody speeds on these streets. So who's the culprit?
Whoever the culprit, Pasiga hopes her message gets through.
No, I certainly don't lose faith in humanity. It would just, I mean, we all just want to live in our neighborhood together.
Reminding the community that being a good neighbor also means being a good sport. Turia Isri, Global News, Ottawa.
And that is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Lac Beauvert in Jasper National Park, Alberta. Beautiful spot. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. And thanks for watching. Neetu Garcha will be here at the anchor desk tomorrow. Bye-bye.